about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe at Dr. Daliah Show. So, old age. I keep seeing these headlines on when does old age start? When does old age begin? I can't stand that term, old age. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. But one recent study said, old age isn't Medicare age, Social Security age, retirement age. One study said they might call it when you're 74 years old. Okay, 74. I know people who are well into their 70s. I wouldn't say old age. I don't think I would ever really use the term old age unless that person was not very functional and, just kind of smiling at you saying, look, I've lived my life. Just let me eat my Jell-O and I'm good. I just have never really used that term. I've used senior. I've used seasoned. I've used geriatric. But I really don't like the term old age. In this one article, let me give credit where credit is due. There was a survey conducted. This is being reported by the New York Post, but it was a University of Berlin and Stanford University and University of Luxembourg and University of Greifswald. Anyway, they examined responses to 14,000 Germans about aging, collected them between 1996 and 2021. So even though we think things have changed lately, some of these answers are almost 30 years old, or some of these responses. And recent responses to the at what age would you describe somebody as old is on average, they said 74. But we need to have an honest conversation about this because those of us who are aging or those of us who might fear that society thinks we're old age, we are concerned that society, if we go socialized medicine or if we really start to have shortages of things, that older individuals will be biased against or they'll be discriminated against. And even though many of us want to give a young child a long life and we prefer that if you're young to like for me, if there was a choice of a liver or a heart and it was between an 8-year-old girl and me, I would choose an 8-year-old girl. But unfortunately, we're short supply of a lot of things as well as money as it pertains to Social Security and Medicare. And so the more we start to see this narrative of, there's old age and older people and we can't maintain our older people, our older individuals, that starts to brew bias. That starts to brew discrimination. And it could unfortunately brew a very bad landscape for those of us who are aging. Old age, when you use that term, implies something is useless, worthless. It's old. Now, I like old things. I collect antiques. I have friends who are older. Now, just because something's old doesn't mean it's bad. But many people use old as that term. You could get something new that's shiny and works or old. And in the past, something old was very valuable. A painting, a piece of furniture, a memento. But nowadays, with how crappy appliances are made and lamps and furniture and, old means bad. Old used to not mean bad. We've changed it into old meaning bad because, look, my TV crapped out in 2 years. It was old. And I don't want old to equate to crapped out. Unfortunately, that's what society's doing. And so I think we need to change the terminology and we need to understand that somebody who is older still has a function, still has a role. Look at Clint Eastwood, for crying out loud. And what's kind of making it worse is all the discussions surrounding Biden, Trump, and their age. And I don't want to see age discrimination. I don't want to see the wrong terms used. And I don't want a generation of traditionalists and older baby boomers to be written off based on a date of birth or something on their birth certificate. We use age as a descriptor. We're changing using gender as a descriptor and race as a descriptor, but we still use age. It's objective. It's finite. It's traceable. I don't want to use the word consistent, but it's something that you can look up and you can verifiable. But unfortunately, if somebody says you're 74, you're old. Come on. Yeah, I just had another birthday and I was making a joke about how I'm old. And my kids are like, no, that's not old. When you're in your 60s, that's old. Excuse me, Brad Pitt is in his 60s. Doesn't look old to me. Brad Pitt still looks fine. So it's very subjective. And that makes me very concerned because at any time somebody can just change that and say, look, we're not going to screen you for breast cancer because of your age. We're not going to entertain the fact that we might have to address your prostate cancer or colon cancer, or you might not qualify for these medications because you know what? Your life expectancy might not. And I've been very frustrated with that because I know many individuals that are living well into their 90s that maybe should be screened for breast cancer in their 70s. Maybe they should have a colonoscopy. You know, we look at people in their 70s as frail. People in their 70s may be at higher risk for medical issues. Yes, maybe their bones are a little weaker. But I know many 70-year-olds that are pretty damn robust. I have a lot of 60-year-old friends in their 60s. And they are, just beacons of youth. I don't know what elixir they're drinking, but they look younger than younger. There is no way when they're in their 70s that I am going to consider them old or feeble. And so I've seen these articles and I'm seeing these headlines. When does old age start? When does old age start? Remember I told you middle age change. It used to be 35 to 55, and then they changed it from 45 to 65. Don't use the term old age. Older individuals have a role. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our Fantasy Football Pocket Guide for Beginners found on Amazon or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and big thanks to Daniel, our producer. So we have the first presidential debate of this election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It is scheduled for June 27th. It is going to be moderated by CNN. And there are rules introduced by CNN ahead of this year's debate. There were some rumors that Biden wanted to sit down, and CNN said those rumors are debunked. But again, personally, I think anybody who might struggle with standing should. We know that he has had some issues where he freezes, but, and he does seem to do better when he sits, but I don't believe they're going to be sitting. I believe they are going to be standing. And this is not going to be what the prior debates looked like. CNN wants to, I guess, temper the debate, the verbal assault that can happen when you have somebody like Trump, who is pretty, I guess, robust, shall we say, with his comments and side wisecracks and responses, very quick-witted, to Biden, who can very publicly struggle. And so when in a debate, there's argument, there's no, you're wrong. Nope, that's not right. That's, I'm mixed on that, because when somebody is saying BS, I don't want to just listen to them sit there and say BS. And I don't want scripted statements. I am here to fight for global change and peace. And, okay, I want to know, I want to see them in real live action. Now, is the border secure? Yes, it is. Why is the border secure? We just had a 13-year-old raped in broad daylight in a park from an illegal immigrant. Talk to us about that. Why does January 6th not matter? What we need to see what the responses are. We also, part of the reason why we have a debate, which I don't think people understand, is it gives the voter a chance to see the humanistic component of their candidate. The first televised presidential debate between JFK and Richard Nixon did just that. Richard Nixon was leading, but when people saw the candidates, it was and heard the candidates and compared the two, it was like night and day. And so when you have Biden with scripted comments and everybody trying to buttress him and support him, and somebody wants to ask him a question, currently, as it pertains to reporters, he just leaves the press conference, or he says, I'm not allowed to talk to you. Well, in a debate, can't do that. You have to answer the questions. And so the back and forth is sometimes very telling. Let's say the moderators don't have real good questions. They're easy softball questions. And the candidates were able to prepare. Biden or Trump could throw at each other a question. So they want to temper that. And now, on the flip side, I don't like it when it's just arguing. You can't hear anybody. Everybody's just arguing, and it's back and forth, and everybody's trying to get their 5 minutes of fame. Like some of these primary debates, it's horrible because there's 7 people talking. And based on which person the camera, or which candidate the camera is on, it's a mess. And oftentimes, moderators do not give equal time to each candidate. So candidates have to fight for camera time, and they're told to fight for camera time. And so, yes, there does have to be some rules, and it does have to be in moderation. But now you have the two most important people in this presidential campaign one former commander-in-chief, one current commander-in-chief. And you got an America that's very scared and very worried about what the hell is going on currently and what can go on in the upcoming years. Right? They need to be able to listen to these two. Now, there will be 2 commercial breaks. It's going to be a 90-minute broadcast. I'm going to be with Steve Sanchez and on KDON and KXT for the recap, live recap after the debate. So make sure you tune in. For those of you who live in the Southern Nevada or the Southwest United States, turn in. Actually, you could also listen on the Odyssey app as well. But commercial breaks, commercials are going to be a little different. They're also going to have there's going to be no opening statements. Usually each candidate gets an opening statement. No. And you know what? I'm fine with that. I think we all know what Biden is about and Trump is about. You're going to hear climate change, electric vehicle, my candidate is this and that. You're going to hear, country's a mess. We need to fix it. It's never been this bad. Vote for me. I think we already know what each side is going to say. But the closing statement is still important, for people to make any final decision, assuming people have not made any decisions yet, which I'm really shocked by. There will be 2-minute closing statements. The debate will begin with a question. Each candidates are allotted 2 minutes to respond, then 1 minute of rebuttal. And then moderators do have some wiggle room and some flexibility. There's going to be visual flashing red lights, visual cues, and then they are going to mute the mics. Microphones will be muted throughout the proceedings, except when it's a candidate's turn to speak. They want to curtail interruptions. Trump has been known to interrupt. But then again, if BS is being, spewed, most candidates will speak out. Trump also kind of knows how to get the camera on him. In fact, Trump is very aware that the camera would rather be on him than Biden. But we need the camera on Biden because we need to see how he could respond. There's going to be no live audience. They are saying no live audience in an attempt to minimize disruptions during the debate. One reason why there are going to be, even though audience members are supposed to be quiet, you have people whenever somebody says something, go, yeah, and then you keep getting ovations and applause. The problem is the debate is only 90 minutes. And so when you add in all the applauses and all the boos and all that, it can really take time away. And it could take away from the candidate's speaking time. So it sounds like both the Trump team and the Biden team agreed to these terms. And I think there's some more, shall we say, rules. But, I'm okay with that because we have a lot. I want to know what's going to happen to healthcare. I mean, who's working on healthcare? We keep this threat of we're going to go socialized. We can't fund Medicare anymore when our baby boomers have put money into the system ever since they were 16 years old. Really? Where's their money? We should have plenty of money for Medicare. None of this BS where, oh, sorry, your medicines aren't covered. Oh, you need advantage plans. You need extra Medigaps. I mean, I'd like to have somebody address that as well after they address the border, after they address foreign policy, the impending foreign conflicts that we might be drawn into more than we already have. The economy, education. These are things we need to know about. The environment, natural resources, what's happening with our cars. Are we going to, because of mandates, be forced to buy a car we don't want? That can possibly hurt the climate as well as use up our water when an electric vehicle goes on fire and needs 10,000 gallons of water to try to extinguish. I think these are things that we need, that I hope they bring up. And again, CNN is more, I guess, softer to Democrats. And so I think there is a lot of preparation to make sure Biden can look at least mediocre. and I'm not trying to criticize him per se, but there has been debunks from the White House on Biden's ability to be commander in chief. And all the public can do is piece together the videos they're seeing of Obama helping him off stage, of him getting confused on stage, of him meandering. The debate allows him to put any myth or rumor to rest. And this is needed right away because the Democratic National Convention is coming up. So I hope they let Biden be Biden so people can really see what he is struggling with or not struggling with. 1-877-DALIA. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOCDALI. So men's health doesn't get talked about a lot. It needs to. We need to be talking about men's and women's health, everybody's health. It's very, very important. And I always get asked by men, I needed to check my testosterone. I think I have low T. And I ask them why. Now, what are you feeling? Tell me what your symptoms are. And oftentimes men may have normal testosterone levels. And so if you're feeling tired, depressed, gaining weight, your stamina's off, erectile dysfunction, even though testosterone is extremely important to check, there's other things that need to be looked at as well. And there's an article that Fox News had written on men's energy and vitality plummeting for 6 reasons. And what are the 6 reasons their vitality and energy could plummet? One is testosterone levels. Our testosterone levels do decline, but there's still a range that it could be in. And so you might be told, well, your testosterone levels are normal. But if it dropped a certain amount of points and a certain percentage of points, you might feel that. And so some individuals might benefit from testosterone supplementation. That is not something that you should, though, have managed superficially over the phone. You have got to make sure somebody's keeping an eye on your testosterone and keeping an eye on your prostate. So men's urological health is an art. That's why we have a specialty in urology for both men and women, looking at the bladder, looking at the kidney, looking at the testicles, looking at the prostate. So there's a lot to it. So rather than just testosterone supplementation and being on the same dose or using the same gel, understand, or given shots, understand there's an art to it and make sure you are followed up on. In 2020, the American College of Physicians recommended that doctors should prescribe testosterone for men with age-related low testosterone to treat sexual dysfunction. Now, that was a very nice recommendation because in terms of sexual dysfunction, which I think is very important for a man's vitality and his energy, testosterone could play a role. But remember what I told you. If you have erectile dysfunction, nothing should be done until somebody checks your heart. Because if you have poor blood flow to the penis, you could have poor blood flow to the heart. And I am so grateful to Pfizer and these pharmaceutical companies that made Viagra and erectile dysfunction medications, because it forced men to come to the doctor's office, which they didn't like to do in the 90s, to have an exam. And while we were looking at your sexual dysfunction, if you were a good medical provider, you check the heart. And I can't tell you how many times I picked up triple vessel disease and coronary artery disease because a man said he was having erectile dysfunction. Not to scare you all, it could be testosterone too, but poor blood flow to other appendages does usually will also include your heart and brain. So you got to make sure that gets checked out. Lack of physical activity. If you don't use it, you lose it. You need your muscles. Your muscles energize you. Your muscles burn energy. Your muscles and exercise make you feel good. So if you're not getting enough physical activity like you used to in your 20s and 30s, well, that's going to show. And it's going to weigh on you. Anytime I start to feel a little down, I get on the treadmill and it fixes it. I feel better. I feel skinnier. So make sure you're exercising. Again, based on your heart. Don't just start running marathons. Get your heart checked. But make sure you are at least walking, being active. Insufficient sleep is another thing. If you're not sleeping well, whether you're a man or woman, you're not going to feel well. Poor sleep makes you grumpy, affects your focus, makes you unmotivated. You're not going to want to exercise or have sex if you're tired. So you got to get proper sleep and not just taking sleeping pills. You also have to make sure that even if you can fall asleep, you're getting good oxygen and you're breathing well. So you need to be evaluated for sleep apnea. I can't tell you how many times men thought they had low testosterone, and it was actually sleep apnea. Make sure a medical provider sees you. Poor diet and nutrition is a biggie. Most of our food is processed. We might go to a grocery store, buy some vegetables, but a lot of the food we eat have preservatives. You cannot be eating foods that are frozen, packaged, preserved. Right? Try to eat as much fresh food as possible. You will feel different. Some people suggest probiotics like lactobacillus. I'm a little uneducated on that. I'm not very. When it comes to probiotics, it's a little difficult in terms of what I can recommend because I don't know a lot of the brands and I don't know which we could trust. And we spoke about using Listerine and how that could raise your risk of cancer, not only because of alcohol, but because of altering your gut microbiome. Having gut microbiome is important, but you have good gut microbiome if you're eating good food, if you're eating good foods and healthy foods and nutritious foods. So make sure you keep that up. Not managing your stress. A lot of times you feel like you have to handle it all. You can't look like you're stressed. You can't look like you can't handle it all. Being the king of the castle, which now is, I think, it's old fashioned, but I mean, my husband, we might, share things equally. And, he treats me like his partner, but I'm not going to lie. I think he takes on more in one aspect of our life than I do. Now, I might work more than he does. I might take on more from a financial standpoint, but he comes to the house, when it comes to the cars, when it comes to he just takes it all on. And that's a lot. So share, delegate. Make sure your kids aren't just sitting there playing video games. We don't ask our kids to help. Ask our kids to help. This concept of kids getting an allowance. Okay, I couldn't eat if I didn't do what my parents told me. If you want to eat and you want a roof over your head, you participate, you contribute. If you do above and beyond your contributions, yes, there's an allowance in it for you. But you need to. You need to recruit the family for more help. And then don't neglect your health care. Men have been notoriously stereotyped for not getting themselves checked out and not going to a medical provider. And we are still seeing men pale in comparison to women to going in and getting seen. It's changing now that women could get birth control over the phone and over the counter and not necessarily go yearly for pap smears. They could do every 3 to 5 years. We're seeing women less, but still, there are very frequent health screens we do. It's not all about mammograms or prostate checks. And so see a medical provider. You might think, you know what, my cholesterol's good, my blood pressure is good, so I'm good. And a medical provider may say, but let's look at your testosterone. Let's look at your salts. Let's look at your liver. Let's look at your kidneys. I'm a physician. And even my doctor remembers things that I might not. 2 minds are better than one. And, another thing, too, that nobody talks about is sometimes we give up when we're dating, when we're sexually active, when we're trying to find a mate. It's all about how we look, being in good shape, getting that energy, and then we get into a rut. And, you sometimes neglect yourself. That's not good. 1-877-DOC-Daliah.
Considered by most, optimized curcumin is one of the few bioavailable and highly absorbable curcumin products on the market. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch. Since most chronic diseases have inflammation, our optimized curcumin seems to be a perfect addition to any nutritional program. It makes sense to me that preventing or reducing inflammation is a key component to our overall health. The Mayo Clinic found that curcumin can decrease swelling and inflammation, has antioxidant properties, and research suggests that curcumin can prevent cancer, or at least slow the spread of cancer, and in many instances make chemotherapy more effective. It protects our healthy cells even from radiation. TotalWellness.com, where we help you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-Daliah, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So one of our listeners, Julianne, is going to be taking a long flight overseas, and she's worried about getting a DVT, a deep vein thrombosis, and is asking what she should do, especially since she's flying coach and doesn't think she's going to have a lot of wiggle room. So, it's interesting. I worry about blood clots also. You could get a blood clot if you're pregnant. High estrogen state can cause you to be pregnant. You could get a blood clot if you're taking estrogen. If you smoke, you could be at higher risk for a blood clot. If you have cancer, you are at higher risk of getting a blood clot. If you sustain trauma, which is always a tricky one for us doctors, because you might play soccer, get a blow to the shin, And then that shin swells over the next couple days. And I'll tell you, go get checked out for a blood clot. Because if the swelling, and assuming you don't have a fracture, is not improving with time and getting worse, that can mean another process is going on that happened after the blow to the leg. So trauma and swelling after trauma not only could be soft tissue injury and bleeding, but could also be a clot. But one of the biggies for blood clots is extensive sitting. And, doing radio for a few hours a day. I worry and I try and get up and I try to always move my legs and keep moving. But a coach flight, when you can't spread out and move around and walk up and down, it's, and I say coach because I splurged and did a first class trip to one of the legs last year when I flew to Israel. And this is amazing. This is Virgin Atlantic. Because still, even first class domestic, you're still supposed to sit. When the fastest seatbelt sign is on, you're supposed to sit. But in this Virgin Atlantic plane, there was a little bar area. Now, basically, just a table near the alcohol that the flight attendants were serving. But people were hanging out and laughing. I couldn't sleep. But, they were singing, there were snacks on this table area, and people were getting up and moving around. And one guy was really getting drunk, and he was running around. He was coming over to me so I could harmonize with him. He was a good singer, and I wanted to sing too. But, wow. First class, people are moving around. That was interesting. But most of the time, even on planes, whether you're first class, business class, you still need to sit. It's just you have more leg room and you can move around. But being stuck in a middle seat on coach, I do think you have a higher risk of a DVT. So what I tell people to do, first and foremost, is if you are concerned, you want to let the flight attendant know and say, look, because if they keep seeing somebody stand, they could get very nervous. They want to make sure you're not a terrorist. They want to make sure you're not disrupting the plane. Plus, when one person stands, other people start to move. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I got to pee. So I unfasten my seatbelt, I go, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, okay, I guess we could go to the bathroom now. I guess, and then all of a sudden, this happens every time I get up to pee. All of a sudden, you hear on the overhead, ladies and gentlemen, the fasten seatbelt sign is still lit. Please stay in your seats. And I'm like, oh my gosh, when did I start? And so, first and foremost, you want to let the flight attendant know, listen, I'm in 5B or 38C, and I do not want to get a blood clot. So I might stand every now and then because my doctor does not want me to sit for extended periods of time. Every hour I need to get up. Every couple hours I need to walk around. I just want to let you know ahead of time. This way, and if they say, but hey, when the fastest seatbelt sign's on, you can't do that. That's fine. You have to still oblige by FAA rules, but at least let them know when you're standing so they don't fear you're a threat. When you do have an opportunity, when they do unfasten the fastest seatbelt sign or they unlight it, make use of that. All right? Now, get up, stretch, walk around. You could let others know I'm stretching. You don't have to go into, I'm worried about a DVT. You don't have to go into that, but I'm just stretching, trying to improve my circulation. Many of us are really well aware of that because so many people have done remote and they have, they've been sitting for hours and their doctors is like, look, now that you're working remote and you're not walking around and saying hi to accounts receivable and shipping and receiving, you're not running around and talking to people, going to the lounge, you're sitting all day at your computer or watching Netflix, you need to get off your ass and you need to improve your circulation. But a big thing I would also recommend is when you have a layover or you are waiting for your flight, walk. So I had a layover when I was with my son going to Germany in Atlanta. And the international terminal, not that exciting, not really a lot to do. But what was so amazing about that terminal is there was a lot of area where I could walk and do laps. So I walked about a mile and a half because I was waiting for my flight. I could keep an eye on the gate, and there was a nice circle, a nice path. And I remember people were watching me. I'm like, I'm just getting my steps in. People understand you're trying to get your steps in. But a big mistake people make is they wait at the terminal. You need to get to the terminal 2 to 3 hours ahead of the flight. I hate doing that. I miss the days when I could get there right as the gate is closing. But September 11th changed that. And so now you're sitting at the gate an hour and a half early. And what do people do? They sit. Don't sit. Walk around. The one thing about an airport is you have a lot of square footage to walk in. And you could be walking back and forth. You could take breaks, but walk. This way, if you do sit for a 5-hour flight or an 8-hour flight, it won't be as damaging because you've been walking. Now, some people say, well, I had to walk through security, so that's enough. Depends on your flight. As far as I'm concerned, try to get your steps in. You'll feel better. Then you could rest. And again, don't panic about a 5 or 8 hour flight. Keep in mind, when you sleep, you should be sleeping for 7 to 9 hours. Your body knows that you are going to be roughly immobile. Your body can gauge that. But if you're over immobilized, that's a problem. The other thing, too, is you move in your sleep. You move your legs. You wiggle your toes. You change positions. You can't do that in seats, especially the coach middle seat. Now, I always get the window. And I know it stinks for anybody sitting next to me when I have to get up and pee, but there's that little extra room that allows me to turn towards the window. I don't like the aisle, for me, because when I fall asleep, I lean to the side. And I don't want to lean into the aisle and then get hit by the cart. I've gotten hit by the cart multiple times. Now, you might prefer the aisle because I could just get up. I could get up, walk around, stretch, and then get my butt back into the chair when the flight attendant looks at me cross-eyed, right? Or cross. And they do. And God bless the flight attendants for doing their jobs because, again, they got to keep everybody safe and they got to follow FAA guidelines. But if you really fear a DVT, then sleep on then take your seat on the aisle. But keep in mind, even if you upgrade, that's an issue. Now, some people ask about the lounges. I don't know if there's a gym, in these airports. Keep in mind, lounge access could be expensive. American Express card allows you access. It's expensive. I don't have an American Express card yet. I think it costs, about $800 a year at least. The lounges are nice because at least you get to move around and you get to eat. But again, I don't want you to sit. I want you to move around and walk around. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.